This is Power Hour with Gabriella Power.
Hello and welcome to Power Hour. I'm Gabriella Power. Thank you for joining us. This news coming out of Minneapolis is absolutely devastating. We are praying for everyone involved in the tragedy. We're going to be joined by Hillary Fordwich in a moment to get the latest on this Trump-hating trans shooter who slaughtered innocent children inside a Catholic school church. Later in the show, we'll be joined by Michael Danby about Iran's involvement in anti-Semitic attacks here in Australia. And for some much lighter news, we'll be joined by CJ Pearson about why Taylor Swift's engagement is a culture win. And Riley Sullivan will also join us with the details on Meghan Markle's latest swipe at the royal family. Joining us now is Hillary Fordwich, president and founder of Strellmark. Hillary, thank you for your time. Let's start with the horrific news out of Minneapolis, where at least 2 children have been killed after a gunman opened fire inside a school church. The victims are aged 8 and 10. More than a dozen others have been injured. Law enforcement agencies have identified 23-year-old transgender woman Robin Westman as the alleged gunman. Now, Robin Westman was formerly male Robert Westman. He allegedly had a handwritten manifesto with the message "Kill Donald Trump" written on magazines. The FBI is investigating this shooting as an act of domestic terrorism and a hate crime targeting Catholics. This is just so heartbreaking and just so horrific. What more do we know about this shooter?
Yes, Gabriella, it's horrific, it's ghastly, and as a dear friend in Minneapolis actually said to me, Minnesota, said, you know, there are horrible people in this world. And if you look at the manifesto that was actually publicized, he talked about, you know, the fact that he wanted to kill children. And I can't even relate to, I don't know if any of our viewers can relate to anyone who would want to ever kill a child. He had multiple guns, multiple weapons. His manifesto laid out everything he was going to do, including choosing the right outfit. He had attended this particular Catholic school. His mother worked there. There are photographs of them as a family on Facebook, and neighbors have actually said, you know, they seem like a completely normal family. It's very just daunting to think that this could be anybody's neighbor. He purchased the guns legally, and he actually posted on YouTube part of these manifestos. So it's actually a little surprising that nothing was ever brought down, or that somehow YouTube isn't monitoring that. I think that's a great pity too, Gabriella.
Absolutely. US President Donald Trump has ordered that all American flags be flown at half-mast at the White House and other public buildings across the country until sunset on Sunday to honour the victims, and we're still praying for everyone involved. Moving on, Donald Trump is calling for billionaire George Soros to face criminal charges, accusing him of backing violent protests across the country. Trump posted on Truth Social, George Soros and his wonderful radical left son should be charged with RICO because of their support of violent protests and much more, all throughout the United States of America. We're not going to allow these lunatics to rip apart America anymore, never giving it so much as a chance to breathe and be free. Soros and his group of psychopaths have caused great damage to our country. That includes his crazy West Coast friends. Be careful, we are watching you. Of course, Donald Trump ends that post with "Thank you for your attention to this matter." But Hillary, there are plenty of concerns after we saw so many violent protests break out across America, university campuses, plenty of pro-Palestine protests, and a lot of concern about who was potentially backing these protests. What do you make of Trump's warning there?
Yes, actually, the ruling, the RICO, it really addresses usually more organized crime. But of course, he's using it in this instance with regard to these organized protests. And Gabriella, I really do think that President Trump and the administration are correct on this, because when you look at any of these protests, the protesters have the same kind of signs. They're wearing the same kind of outfit. The ones that were the pro-Palestine with the same, you know, checkered scarves, and those that actually in camp have the same colored tents. So there's been a lot of speculation, yes, across the media that this is some kind of organized initiative. And then also I've seen interviews of some of these protesters when they were calling Donald Trump a fascist, and they were interviewed saying, "What do you mean?" And about 10 of these people said, "Well, that's what we were told to say." So been instructed by someone, they're there by someone. And when I was in New York City last year, I'll never forget being in a hotel where they were protesting outside and the police were rolling their eyes saying, you know, we see the same people everywhere. They're just shipped in everywhere. And that was actually from the police outside. So I do think he's on the right track here, President Trump.
Yeah, well, we'll watch this space very closely. Now, former Vice President Kamala Harris's fundraising events for the DNC have underperformed, according to Axios. Who would have thought? While the party is still recovering debts from her failed presidential campaign, Axios says that the total money raised from the events that she's been holding, that has been disappointing. Well, Hillary, I think we could have told them that.
Yes, absolutely. And it is purported, Gabriella, that now the war chest, the Republican war chest, is about 300 million. And going into the midterms, the Democrats only have, are you ready? 13 million.
Wow.
So they're trying to, you know, they've got a lot of catching up to. It's not even going to be a fair fight. And obviously, don't forget, it only came out after the campaign that all of these major stars that had spoken on her behalf for Kamala, they actually were paid. So they were just making money. I mean, if they really supported her or not. And so I think that's very shallow as well. Whereas, as we know, President Trump, or Donald Trump at the time, or former President Trump then, he had all these stars coming out of their own volition and their own will and donating their time. That's a vast difference and a vast difference in commitment.
Absolutely, and it's what's translate. I think people could see who was telling the truth, who was potentially paid to say a certain message. But Donald Trump has held a marathon cabinet meeting, went for 3 hours and 17 minutes. And during the meeting, RFK Jr. says that he believes the HHS believes that they have found interventions which caused a massive spike in autism in children. Just listen to this.
Finding interventions, certain interventions now that are clearly, almost certainly causing autism. And we're going to be able to address those in September.
So there has to be something artificially causing this, meaning a drug or something. And I know you're looking very strongly at different things, and I hope you can come out with that as soon as possible.
We will.
So 1 in 10,000, and now it's 1 in 31 or 34 or 12 if it's a boy. Can you imagine that? 1 in 12. That's for a boy.
On average, 12.5 boys.
It's not even believable that that could be. And that was 1 in 10,000 not so long ago.
Hillary, this is something that RFK Jr. has been speaking about for a long time and promised that he'd be looking into.
Yes, this is part of the MAHA movement, the Make America Healthy Again. And a few things here. One thing that's very interesting, actually, is Amish children, and those are the Mennonites that really do not participate in regular society. They don't eat junk food. They're not getting vaccines. They're eating literally off the land because they grow their own vegetables and fruits, etc. Do you know there are almost no instances of autism, no instances of cancer whatsoever? So we know incredible. It's something. Yes, it is incredible. It's to do with something to do with modern society. Now, there are those on the other side, actually, who do say, well, it's just that our detection methods are more superior now, and we know how to detect autism, whereas we didn't before. But it is a dreadful statistic, and as we just heard, 1 in 12, and it basically didn't exist in the 1970s. All I can say, mother of children, I only gave my children fruits, vegetables, no junk food, proteins. Don't give them junk food and don't eat chemicals.
Well, I'm looking for. Yes, good advice, great parenting, and I'm looking forward to the findings that are going to be released in September. But Hillary, finally to the UK, 57% of Britons say that immigration is one of the most important issues facing the country. This is according to a YouGov poll. Also, 54% of Britons say that the recent protests outside hotels being used to house asylum seekers that we have been covering here on this program, that those protests are justified. This, of course, comes as Keir Starmer's government is facing an existential crisis over immigration. It loses the confidence of the people, clearly, including its own voters, over the out-of-control boat arrivals.
Yes, since his administration has been in, two-tier Keir Starmer, 52,000 illegals have entered into the UK, Gabriella. Isn't that the equivalent of an invasion? And what I always say is, could you even contemplate all those that died defending the UK from the Nazis? What if we'd let the Nazis in and given them a free hotel and free food and free cell phones? I mean, that would have been incomprehensible. And then think about this. This is the absolutely dreadful policy they're talking about now. Because of the protests outside outside of these hotels, like Epping in Essex, where those mothers and they weren't organized, by the way, because going back to Soros here in the United States, I do think he's got a global reach. There are organized protesters over there as well. These mothers had local signs. But because of all the protests outside of the hotels, where it's obviously very concentrated in terms of illegals, the new government policy is called the scatter policy, where what they're doing is they're going to landlords in houses where they have apartments in like old big Victorian buildings and old houses, etc. And they're giving them 5 years rent, almost double what they would normally rent for, and paying for all the repairs. So landlords, people just like regular people, they need the money, they want the money. But this scatter principle, and at the same time, when you have 1.2 million in the UK waiting on the housing list, it is just unconscionable.
Absolutely. Hilary Fordwich, president and founder of Strellmark, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely, Gabriella, pleasure.
It's time for Media Meltdowns, and the media right around the world is going crazy over Taylor Swift's engagement to Travis Kelce. The reaction has been wild. Here's CBS White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi freaking out as she receives the news.
Taylor Swift is engaged. Taylor Swift is engaged. Taylor Swift is engaged. Come back to me. She just posted it. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh, it's huge. The ring is ginormous. This is so exciting. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God, it's on her Instagram. It's on her Instagram. It's on her Instagram. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I feel like Paul Revere right now. Like
You cannot fake that reaction. She's genuinely so happy. And I get it. It's nice to have some good news to report on. But it's not just the mainstream media treating this as the biggest story in the world right now. There are plenty of political commentators, content creators, and YouTubers who will not stop talking about this. Here's Ben Shapiro's reaction.
Yes, it's finally happened. The most important event of our lifetime. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce are engaged. I know. I, too, am flabbergasted, shocked. I am ecstatic. I mean, today is a magical day in the history of the United States and perhaps all of Western civilization.
And here is commentator Brett Cooper.
Every single brand, every single mainstream media outlet, every single, publication, everybody, including myself, is focusing on Taylor Swift. That is how massive this is. This is. Sorry guys, I can't even speak. There is so much going on.
She's not wrong. Plenty of people might not like Taylor Swift's politics, but they might enjoy her music or at least respect what she's been able to build, and have, of course, been on the journey through her past relationships and are now happy to see Taylor find the right guy to settle down with. Here's Meghan Kelly's reaction.
I think it's great she finally found love. I really do. I am rooting for them. I think it's not a coincidence that the person she ultimately decided to settle down with is a real man. Is like a football player, tough guy who doesn't really take a lot of shit from people. Like, yeah, that's generally attractive to most women who don't want, someone in a scooter with a man bun. That's really not as hot.
Joining us now is RNC Youth Advisory Council co-chair CJ Pearson. CJ, it's great to see you. I think it's interesting what Meghan Kelly had to say there, that Taylor Swift has ended up with a very masculine man who adores her. And of course, Taylor Swift is 35. She has millions of young girls looking up to her. And looking at this reaction that we're seeing right around the world, people are happy for her, and they're happy about this cultural win, that marriage is something to aspire to have a family, to have children. And I think people just want to see them have a happy and healthy life together. What's your reaction to this? And what would you say the cultural impact of this is going to be? Are we going to see marriages go up?
I think this is definitely a cultural one for conservatives. If it leads to more marriages, it's something we should actively celebrate. If it leads to more babies, it's something we should definitely celebrate as well. And I got to tell you, it's a absolute kind of rebuttal to the entire leftist narrative, the feminist narrative that women don't need men, women don't need marriage, and it's something that's passé or a thing of the past.
Yeah.
Because Taylor Swift I think acknowledge the fact that she's better with someone that, encourages her ambitions. That's her, her partner and supporter in her life. And it's incredible to see. I wouldn't say I'm a Taylor Swift fan, but I'm a fan of this. And I think many people would probably agree.
Yeah, well said. Look, there's drama at Vanity Fair. Vanity Fair's new boss reportedly wants First Lady Melania Trump to feature on the cover, but just the mere suggestion of having Melania Trump as a cover girl has, of course, sparked fierce backlash from some lefty staffers. One editor told the Daily Mail that I'll be walking out the effing door and I'll have half my staff follow me. And of course, we've seen this before. Melania was, of course, excluded from Vanity Fair and Vogue during Trump's first term, which is, of course, in contrast to Michelle Obama, who graced Vogue's cover 3 times while she was First Lady. But CJ, it's 2025. Like, why is there still outrage about this?
It's insane. These people actually don't realize, I think the state that our country is in right now. Melania Trump is probably the classiest first lady we've ever had in American history. Someone who has brought the office absolute grace, and the fact that Vanity Fair is having this fight right now as to whether or not she deserves to be on the cover. They would probably sell more issues of the magazine than they ever before. And so would say to the editor-in-chief of Vanity Fair, so all of these people that are throwing this fight, picking this fight, let them go. Tell them, don't let the door hit you, where it splits you. And I think that's what we need to see is some actual courage from this publication and just say, cancel culture is over. The obituary for that was written on November 5th when the American people resoundingly reelected President Trump to be our president.
Well, President Trump's approval rating has climbed 5 points in the past month, with more than half of Americans backing his handling of crime after the federal takeover of Washington's police force. This is according to a new poll. CJ, this comes, of course, after Trump's DC takeover has sent violent crime plummeting within days. Even the city's mayor admits that locals are feeling safer.
For carjackings, the difference between this period, this 20-day period of this federal surge and last year represents a 87% reduction in carjackings in Washington, D.C. We know that when carjackings go down, when the use of gun goes down, when homicide or robbery go down, neighborhoods feel safer and are safer. So this surge has been important to us for that reason.
But CJ, the Democrats and the mainstream media have been telling us what a bad idea this has been, and apparently not.
What a novel idea that the American people want to be safe in their nation's capital. How radical is that, right? And I got to tell you, as someone who spends a lot of time in Washington, D.C., Muriel Bowser, the mayor here, is not a card-carrying MAGA Republican. She is as Democrat as they come. And for her to even acknowledge the fact that President Trump is making D.C. safe again should speak volumes. People want to be safe in their communities. And to all the white liberals who are trying to portray this as some assault on Black people, here's the news that I want to break to them. Black people want to be safe too. And maybe they should go talk to some Black people before they go out and say that Black people don't. Because when I look at these protests, all I see is old white liberals who are saying that apparently this is the worst thing to happen in D.C., but many Black people are saying this is the best thing to happen in D.C. in a long, long time. Well
said. Look, many of us were hoping that DEI is dead, but apparently not. The Democratic National Committee is reaffirming its support for DEI. The DNC's Resolutions Committee backed a resolution affirming the party's commitment to diversity, equity and inclusion at its annual summer meeting. This is Tennessee Committee member Bill Owen.
Republican friends and fellow citizens, I say, who profess to be active Christians, I remind them that DEI is the very foundation of the Christian church.
CJ, can I get your reaction?
I think he should read his Bible a little bit more thoroughly, here. But at the end of the day, the DNC probably will never learn their lesson. DEI got them Kamala Harris, and what did that get them? It got them 85th and 47th president of the United States, Donald J. Trump. And so if they are, continue to be ignorant and continue to be stubborn, well, I feel as if that actually bodes well for us in 2028 when we'll probably inaugurate President J.D. Vance. So good for them, but I would say probably a lot better for us.
Let's talk about California Governor Gavin Newsom. Sorry to do this to you, but as we know, he is a disaster. But here he is in June 2018, while campaigning. He says that if the next governor doesn't do something to improve housing affordability and the homeless situation in California, that governor would be a failure. Listen to this.
Affordability is number one. Issue of housing costs everywhere I go. That's the universal issue. Number two, people are just fed up with the homeless crisis in the state. No other state in the country as many people out in the streets and sidewalks as the state of California. I think if the next governor doesn't address the issue of affordability on housing, that governor will have failed. If we don't address the homeless issue in a meaningful way, we'll have failed also on a moral framework because it's a tragedy to see so many people self-medicating in drug or alcohol addictions, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, paranoia out on the streets and sidewalks. So those two issues for me have been most resonant on this campaign trail.
So, CJ, according to Gavin Newsom's criteria, he's essentially a failure. He, of course, was elected that November. There's now a bigger homeless crisis in California than at the time of the video. And, of course, housing has almost never been less affordable.
No, you're exactly right. So I would definitely implore Gavin Newsom to look himself in the mirror and justify this. But I guarantee that he won't. This is the most, this governor lacks self-awareness unlike any politician I've ever seen before. But here's the deal. When people talk about, Gavin Newsom being the best Democrats have to offer in 2028, I kind of laugh at it because the moment that the American people are exposed to his actual record, the homeless camps all throughout his state, the destitution all throughout his state, corner to corner, there is no way in which they will rally behind him. And so, if this is the best Democrats have to offer, I'm excited for it. And I'm very, very optimistic about our chances in 2028.
Well, earlier this week, Donald Trump slammed Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass. Listen to this.
We have a mayor there that can't even get permits to the people that lost their houses. Lee Zeldin got every permit. The hardest permit is the federal permit. Within 20 days, every single permit was there for the people to build their houses. But people are writing us and they're saying they won't give us. The mayor is incompetent. The governor is incompetent. Gavin. I know Gavin very well. He's an incompetent guy with a good line of and he doesn't get the job done. And frankly, those people want to build their houses. It's terrible. They could have been built. Some of them could have been built already. But think of it, the federal government that has the most complex part, and it's the most complex environmental thing to do. We got it. Everybody had it within 30 days. And they're not even close to getting their permits. And now they're talking about taking some of those sites and building low-income housing on them. These are high-end neighborhoods. And I'm all for low-income housing. I built a lot of low-income housing. I know all about 236. I know every program that there is in the government. I used every one of them. I know more about low-income housing than probably almost anybody. And it's great. It's fine. It's wonderful. But you don't build it in Pacific Palisades. You don't build it there, and you don't build it in the other areas that burned down. So they're talking about putting up low-income housing. And you talk about riots. They're going to have riots if that happens because you're taking the people's property away. They want to build their houses, and they're unable to get permits from the mayor and from the governor. And that's a terrible thing.
CJ, I love that he does not hold back, and I think he speaks for a lot of frustrated people in LA.
He speaks for a lot of people and a lot of Californians who are disillusioned by this governor's so-called leadership, if you want to be so gratuitous to call it that, right? And, what's interesting to me is that while Gavin Newsom seems hell-bent on dunking on President Trump on social media, what he should actually be focused on is actually doing the job he was elected to do, serve the people of California, deliver for Californians. But instead, he'd rather imitate President Trump's tweets, imitate his rhetoric. But the funny thing is that what he doesn't seem to realize is that there is nothing better than the original. No one wants the fake. No one wants the fugazi. And that's exactly what Newsom exposes himself to be every single time he opens his mouth these days.
CJ Pearson, thank you so much for joining us. Great to speak to you again.
Thank you for having me.
Sky News has revealed that a tip-off from Israeli intelligence assisted ASIO during its investigation unravelling the Iran terror attacks here in Australia. Joining us now is former Labor MP and former Chair of Foreign Affairs and Defence Committee, Michael Danby. Michael, thank you for your time. Look, ASIO reached the conclusion that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps was involved independently of Israel, but this is not the first time that Israel has helped Australia investigate attacks.
No, that's true. There was an airline that had people smuggle stuff onto it that the Israelis were onto and tipped off. I think it was an Etihad flight from Sydney and saved several hundred people from being blown up mid-air. But what's good about this is to see that there is still cooperation between the two intelligence services, despite the difficult relations between the country. And bloody well it should be too, from both sides, because we don't want to place citizens at risk because of political differences, important political differences, but safety of citizens in Israel and Australia is more important.
Absolutely. Look, Labor ignored calls to list Iran's Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organisation for years, despite warnings from a Senate inquiry and evidence that the IRGC orchestrated assassinations, kidnappings and terror plots abroad. The Albanese government has been accused of leaving Australians vulnerable by failing to act sooner in declaring the IRGC as a terrorist organisation. Do you agree with this, that the government left it too late?
Senator Claire Chandler is owed great credit for pursuing this very vociferously in the Senate. And look, Wong and Albo, etc., have woken up late to this Iranian threat. That's obvious. Probably there's a lot of disbelief at the top levels of Australia that Iran has the bandwidth, as Greg Sheridan said, to attack Australia at a time when there's not enough water in Tehran, where there's no electricity, where they've had their entire nuclear program destroyed by the Israeli-American attack. So there's no excuse for people who've got good advice not acting earlier, but they should have. Hopefully we've got them in time. But I tell you one thing, I've noticed that Albo watched that film Argo about the American diplomats being saved via a very unusual scheme. He should be watching Fauda too, because it shows that poor old Mr. Abbas wouldn't last an hour there on the West Bank if it wasn't for the Israeli Secret Service keeping him alive. But we won't be having an embassy back there for a long time, Gabrielle. Any Australian who's in Tehran, I would say get out, listen to the government. It's very dangerous. They're very nasty people, as Kylie Moore Gilbert, the Australian academic who was imprisoned in Irvine prison, can tell you. Very nasty.
Can you take us through the direct role that the IRGC plays in Iran?
The IRGC performs the role in Iran that the SS provided in Germany. It's a parallel organisation to the state. It has its own army. It has its own intelligence service. It has its own sources of income. And it has its own street thugs, like the Nazis used to have the SR, the Sturmabteilung. The IRGC has the Basij, and they go and beat up women and beat up protesters whenever there's a demonstration against the Ayatollah. So it's a sinister parallel state that has all the best arms, it has the most money, and it's the most fanatical, just like the SS was for the regime. Very scary people. And they are the ones who interrogated poor Kylie Moore Gilbert in the prison when she was incarcerated there unjustly for so many years. And they asked her about sites here in Australia. My goodness, they were obviously onto attacking Australia way back then.
Well, ASIO is right now investigating whether an attack on the former home of Jewish leader Alex Rubinstein was ordered by Iran. And how chilling is it that Tehran is believed to be behind many anti-Semitic crimes here in Australia?
Well, I think, Gabrielle, you're right on the ball there. It's not just the two that have already been revealed. The full story of this is yet to come out. But what's amazing is that this regime that as I said, doesn't have enough water in Tehran because they spend so much money on foreign terrorists, Hezbollah, Houthis, Hamas, has enough time or headspace to attack targets all over Australia. It's scary. This is an attack on Australia. We're very lucky that people weren't killed. This is a very serious attack on our sovereignty.
Yeah, well said. Look, looking at the situation in the Middle East, Donald Trump has presided over a policy meeting on the war in Gaza. Michael, I want to get your thoughts on where we're at the moment and what the solution is. As we know, Australia seems to want to recognise the state of Palestine, but we also know that Hamas would win an election if an election was held. What is the solution? Obviously, a hugely difficult question to answer, but what Israel's solution is at the moment?
Well, there's 3 points I'd make in response to that. As I said before, poor old Mr. Abbas, who Penny Wong and Albo, who've done the right thing on this Iran thing. I must give them acknowledgement for that. Don't seem to understand is Hamas would win an election. Abbas wouldn't survive an hour if it wasn't for protection of the Israeli Internal Security Service. So we'd have to really worry about that. You hold an election, a Hamas or a Hamas proxy would be elected. The most important thing for Western democracies, even if they want to have an election in the West Bank and Gaza so we can get a regime that the Israelis could deal with, is we have the same problem we had in Germany after their defeat in the Second World War. The population has to be denazified. They have this fanatical education that teaches them hatred, not just of Israel, but of Jews. The prima donna of the Palestinian movement on the West Bank, Ahlam Tamimi, has just come out on social media and said that it's not Zionists, it's Jews who are their enemy and they all must be destroyed. Now, how do you deal with a population that's so fanaticised? I blame UNRWA a lot for this. Hillel Neuer has demonstrated time and time again that the education they give these poor Palestinian kids just fanaticises them, robs them of a future. And, if the Australian Education Union wants to do better things than march across the bridge in Sydney, why don't they get out their textbooks and teach diversity, equity and inclusion to Palestinians on the West Bank and Gaza?
That's a thought, isn't it? Look, Michael Danby, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Meghan Markle has taken a fresh swipe at the royal family. Riley Sullivan is a lifestyle reporter here at skynews.com.au and he's always across the latest celebrity headlines. Riley, great to see you.
Great to be back.
Okay, so Meghan Markle recently sat down with Bloomberg and then made the complaints about her time with the royal family. Let's take a listen.
Is there an inherent tension in trying to be relatable while also being a duchess?
No, I don't find, I'm just being myself. So I think probably it was different several years ago where I couldn't be as vocal and I had renewed pantyhose all the time. Let's be honest, that was not very myself. I hadn't seen pantyhose since movies in the 80s when they came in the little egg. That felt a little bit inauthentic, but that's a silly example. But it is an example of when you're able to dress the way you want to dress and you're able to say the things that are true and you're able to show up in the space really organically and authentically. That's being comfortable in your own skin. And that's, of course, had different chapters in my life. But right now, no, I don't feel that I need to prove anything.
Riley, she's still banging on about this. I can't believe it. What did you make of it?
I mean, spare me. The idea of her saying, being vocal and showing up, you're trying to make money, Meghan. She's not doing anything for anyone else. When she was a working royal, working royals is a life of service. If she feels that's inauthentic, what she's doing now, that's inauthentic.
Yeah.
Okay, she's sitting on a couch trying to sort of sell this story that she's showing up and is this sort of, I guess, figure of of empowerment. It's like you're trying to make money. She's not interested in philanthropy. She doesn't do anything for anyone else. I'm so sick of this. I think it's so hypocritical of Meghan. And if she wants to be Gwyneth Paltrow, go for it. But don't pretend, don't sit there acting like you're living this authentic life now and that you're showing up and being vocal, because Meghan Markle is only interested in Meghan Markle.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually sat down and started watching season 2 of With Love, Meghan last night, and it is worse than I could have thought, because it's all about herself. It's just a show. It's the entire show is just look I can cook in the kitchen. Look, the reviews are in. Am I the only one that's being critical of this season?
Oh, not at all. I mean, even the sort of outlets that you would think would be a little bit more generous to Meghan Markle, someone like The Guardian, which is not necessarily, you know, they're not in the interest of defending the royal family. They gave it 2 stars.
Wow.
And there was a really interesting point in the review in The Guardian, which I totally agree with, which is that there's this unfortunate effect when you're watching the show where the guests outshine Meghan. It's like, especially the Chrissy Teigen episode, you know, Chrissy Teigen is quite polarizing, but Chrissy Teigen obviously has a lot of charisma and she's, you know, been around a long time. And people were saying that, you know, just in those few minutes on screen, it's like Meghan just completely faded away because, you know, she isn't authentic. She is not someone who has anything to say or a point of view. You know, she's playing at this role of being this sort of Martha Stewart type. But the reality is she is a working actress that married a member of the royal family. And now she's trying to cash in. And that's all it is. And I think that this constant need by Meghan to control the narrative and to constantly recast herself in this role, it's just so inauthentic.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, I really paid the price for watching part of that season last night. I found it hilarious the way she'd happily pat herself on the back for doing such a small task. She was doing a bit of arts and craft and then saying, this looks amazing. Like, she just has no problem, I suppose, promoting herself, and I don't think it'll ever stop. But jailed sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell has made some shocking allegations about the Duchess of York. Now, it's not like Ghislaine Maxwell is certainly someone who could be trusted, but what did she say about Fergie's involvement with Jeffrey Epstein?
Right. So this was all from that interview last month with the US Department of Justice that was conducted in the prison. Ghislaine was asked about a myriad of topics, and including on that was the Duke and Duchess of York. So she actually contradicted Prince Andrew. He has publicly claimed that he met Jeffrey Epstein through Ghislaine, because they knew each other socially. He knew Ghislaine already in the 80s on the London social scene, and that was how he was introduced to her. She said that's not true. She said it was Fergie. So Fergie knew Jeffrey Epstein first, allegedly, and that was how the introduction was made. And Ghislaine said she felt left out of it because she did know the Yorks socially, but their connection with Epstein was not through her. And so she felt quite funny about it. And she actually felt, which I thought was quite embarrassing for Fergie, she claimed that she felt that Fergie was trying to put the moves on Epstein. So this is back in the 90s when Andrew and Fergie are separated by that point. Epstein is obviously this mysterious financier guy, and allegedly Ghislaine felt that Fergie was trying to put the moves on him romantically. So, you know, that's a huge change from what Andrew has said publicly. He's always he's never mentioned Fergie in the context of Epstein. He's always said that he knew Epstein through Ghislaine Maxwell, and that was it. So I think this completely raises questions and doubts about the circumstances there. We do know that Fergie, notoriously, she had a lot of debts. We know that in the 2000s, Epstein stepped up and paid off some of her personal debts. She later called this a massive error of judgment. She publicly apologised for that. A terrible decision by Fergie. But again, this is this constant sort of headlines and all of these, you know, historical things coming up again. I think it's terrible for the royal family and terrible for Fergie and Andrew.
Yeah. Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie could one day receive a whopping inheritance despite their parents' financial problems. What do we know about the finances?
Yeah, so this has been one that's come up again recently because, as usual, a lot of things when we talk about the York family, it's all about Royal Lodge. Because the fact of the matter is, as much as the royal family is trying to hide them away, they live in one of the largest properties in the Crown Estate, the Royal Lodge. So that is under a 75-year lease. We know this now for the last couple of years that it's an ironclad lease. Efforts to move Andrew and Fergie out of that house have failed because the lease has taken precedence in terms of negotiations. So there's a conversation now about, well, what happens to the lease in the event that Fergie and Andrew pass away? it's a 75-year lease. They're only about 20 years in. So there's still over 50 years left on this lease agreement, which is basically, you can't not enforce it. So the kind of conversation is, all right, will it pass down to Beatrice and Eugenie? They could possibly inherit the lease. Unclear how the royal family would feel about this. They're not working royals. They're definitely, proud members of the royal family. They're in the inner circle, especially with William. But, whether they actually take on the lease, I don't know. I don't think that they would risk it. I think that King Charles already provides grace and favour apartments for Beatrice and Eugenie, so I think that they probably wouldn't want to rock the boat. In terms of inheritance, we also know that there's at least 2 trusts that they benefit from. The first one was set up when Andrew and Fergie divorced in 1996. The Queen put £2 million in a trust account for Beatrice and Eugenie's benefit. So, and you can imagine in the 90s, £2 million then to £2 million today, I'm sure with interest and investing, that is probably a lot more. So I think that that's probably what they're living off now. I mean, they have careers, but in terms of their lifestyle, I'm sure that money's come in handy. They're also going to be receiving a big payday in a couple of years because their great-grandmother, the Queen Mother, put a lot of her wealth into a trust for the 10 Windsor grandchildren. Beatrice and Eugenie are beneficiaries. And that's kind of a quirky trust. That trust becomes... It pays out when they turn 40. So they're now in their mid-30s. So they will be coming into a big chunk of money in a couple of years' time.
Yeah, not too far away. Now, royal bride Harriet Sterling is reportedly being put to the test at Balmoral ahead of her wedding to Peter Phillips. Now, the question is, of course, will Harriet win the approval of the royal family?
Yeah, I think that the Balmoral test is this sort of storied kind of tradition where new members of the royal family or people marrying into the royal family head up to Scotland and they spend time with the whole royal family because, of course, as we know, everyone gathers there in the English summertime. They hunt, they fish. It's sort of this wild lifestyle. It was definitely Queen Elizabeth's passion, was spending time at Balmoral. And Harriet, this is Harriet's first time spending time at Balmoral. I think that she'll probably fit in great. I think that she's a wonderful addition, frankly, to the royal family. And it is important for the royal family to spend time with her because even though Peter Phillips is not a working royal, he does attend all of the family events. He's at Christmas at Sandringham. He's around the royal family constantly. So naturally, I think there's curiosity for members of the royal family to meet Harriet. I think that in terms of picking a bride, you couldn't do much better than an NHS nurse. I think you would be hard-pressed to find anyone in the UK that has anything less than complete admiration and respect for an NHS worker. So I think she'll pass with flying colours.
Riley Sullivan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And that is Power Hour. Thank you for your company. We'll see you next week. Make sure you subscribe to Sky News Australia on YouTube.